So I'm thinking about retiring. How much money could I safely withdraw from my investment portfolio? This was the question asked by a caller into Dave Ramsey's show in the fall of 2023, and Dave's dynamic response got a lot of attention, and not the good kind. Welcome to the first episode of A Worthwhile Retirement. My name is Jacob George, and together we will explore what it means for our retirement to be worthwhile and how we can best position ourselves to achieve it. I'm very excited to go on this journey with you. I hope you are as well. Dave Ramsey recently made financial news about what he had to say regarding something called the 4% rule, otherwise known as the safe withdrawal rate. We're going to talk about what he said, why it's not quite right, but also why there is some truth to what I think he may be trying to say. But quickly, I wanted to talk about what the 4% rule actually is. In the 90s, a man named Bill Bingen wanted to know how much a retired person could withdraw from their portfolio without running out, even in the worst case scenario. So he measured every 30-year rolling period up until that point, and essentially made the discovery that a retiree could safely withdraw a little over, you guessed it, 4%. That's 4% of their initial starting balance. So quick example, somebody retiring on $1 million could make $40,000 withdrawals every year for 30 years, and historically, they would not have run out. Now, that's a very simplified explanation of the quote-unquote rule, but there you have it. So back to Dave Ramsey. Last fall, November of 2023, somebody called into Dave's show. This caller was considering an early retirement and was wondering how much they could safely withdraw from their portfolio. So what did Dave say? 4%? Well, not quite. The answer Dave Ramsey gave for how much this person could safely withdraw from their investment portfolio was 8%. 8%. Now, if you didn't know, there are some problems with this response. Namely, for most of history, you would have long outlived your money making 8% withdrawals over a 30-year time horizon. In fact, somebody retiring 2001 would have run out of money in just 13 years. So Dave is definitely incorrect. But maybe he's not crazy. You see, for years, I was mixed up on what the 4% rule actually meant. Does it mean that my portfolio won't deplete all the way to zero? Or does it mean that my principal won't decline in value? And when I would go to look it up, I would find both answers. And in theory, that's a pretty big issue. But in practice, maybe it doesn't matter all that much. While the 4% rule lasted 30 years 100% of the time, the 4% rule didn't even decline your initial portfolio balance a whopping 96% of the time. I'm going to say that one more time. Yes, the 4% rule lasted 30 years every time, but 96% of the time, you do end up with more money than you started with. So, for most of history, if you were mixed up on whether the 4% rule meant depleting your portfolio to zero, or if it meant a decline in your initial principal, well, it wouldn't have mattered too much. That 30-year period from 1969 to 1998 was just a really, really bad time to retire. To further demonstrate this, 80% of the time, the 4% rule actually lasts 50 years rather than 30. And you know how we said that 96% of the time, your portfolio actually increases in value? Well, half the time, it nearly triples in value. Again, you have a 50-50 chance of your ending balance in 30 years to be nearly 3 times more than you started with. This is a really good time to bring up Dave Ramsey's criticism of the 4% rule. That it's not realistic. That it's too low of a withdrawal. And well, that's true. If the 4% rule doesn't even dwindle my balance 96% of the time, then for those of us trying to die with zero, a 4% withdrawal probably is way too low. It's probably not realistic. But it was also never supposed to be. The 4% rule is not a rule, it's a guideline, a conversation starter, a jumping off point. In fact, Bill Bingen never even described it as the 4% rule. He just described it as a safe withdrawal rate. It was never intended to be used as a retirement plan. Nobody's withdrawing a fixed amount from their portfolio for 30 years straight. It's just not something that happens. Markets rise and fall, and our cash balance ebbs and flows. Our withdrawal needs change. So to be a strict practitioner of the 4% rule doesn't really make sense. All that to say, I can understand Dave's frustration with those who might view the 4% rule as a hard and fast rule to be strictly adhered to. It was never meant to be that way. A 4% safe withdrawal rate is by definition almost certainly too low. But on the flip side of that, a hard and fast 8% annual withdrawal would not last a 30-year time horizon most of the time. So, how much should we withdraw from our portfolios in retirement? Well, probably more than 4%, but probably less than 8%. Thanks for listening. Now, while I do work as a financial planner, I'm likely not your financial planner. So that means the information in this podcast should not be taken as personal investment, legal, or tax advice specific to your situation, because I don't know your situation. So be sure to consult with somebody who does before making life-altering decisions based off of something that you heard on a podcast on the internet. See you next time.